All right. Just another sanity mic check. Make sure nothing weird's happened. Yep. Mic check. 1, 2. Awesome.
Cameras all good in the back? All right, we'll start with Dave up front.
Thanks. Hi, Ryan. I was looking at your stats at New Hampshire when you were quarterback, and I knew you had a ton of passing yards. I had looked at them before. You also averaged 300 rushing yards a season. You've had quarterbacks here that ran the ball, like obviously Will, Justin. With Julian, what's your philosophy with him? Like, how important do you think it is for him to pick up one or two cheap first downs or whatever it is per game?
Yeah, that's the X factor. And it's something, he knows that, some of the games he did this year. And I think going into this season, there's going to be opportunities for him to do that. And that, can be a big point of the game. And so I think there's two ways to do that. One is when it breaks down, escaping the pocket, keeping your eyes downfield, or then escaping and getting a few yards. In the rivalry game, he had a big scramble down the sideline for a first down. That was huge. Yeah, more of that, the better. And then there's also the run game, where whether it's a design run or he's reading somebody in the box, equating numbers. So the more we can do that, the better. Again, is that going to be the first thing we do with him? No, but he needs to be able to do that. All of our quarterbacks do.
Joey.
Ryan, sort of a big picture question. We haven't talked tons last season, but the offense was on the slower end nationally in pace of play. And you talked at times last year about you wanted efficiency, and that was sort of the guiding philosophy. Now that you've had time, how did you feel about how it ended up in terms of the pace and playing fast versus playing slow and being efficient?
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to efficiency, and if if playing faster gives us more efficiency, that's fine too. But ultimately, it comes down to how well we execute. I think when you look at the year before and you look at last year, the last 2 years, I think it's pretty close. And so that's typically what it comes down to. So we're always looking to be more efficient.
Coach, with 51 new players and the schedule that's looming, does this spring seem different? And it used to be you'd bring in the young guys and whatever, but you guys got to kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, it's more like preseason camp. We've never had this many players for spring practice. And so it's allowed us an opportunity to actually get a couple, 2 fields going at once and practice 3 groups when we're all together. So, and be a little bit more creative. Even today, kind of how we finished practice was a little bit different, and how we're, being efficient with our time. But it's a good opportunity to get a lot of guys, a lot of reps. There's been times, in the past where, you didn't have enough offensive linemen because you were waiting for guys to come in the summer, whether they were freshmen. You had the second portal. The portal's done, and other than just, Tucker, everybody else is here for the freshmen. So it's been good. It's been good to get a head start with our team. That's the other part of it. There's certainly a lot of negatives to the way that January goes. But if you're looking at the positives are you know who your team is, and you get a start to work with everybody and pull them together. So, even now we're working on building an identity, building a personality, when typically the spring was so much focused on individuals getting better. We're able to focus on those things a little bit more. But to your point, 51 new players, we're just learning. One of the goals is to learn how to practice, because, we might play 15, 16, 17 games, but, the goal ultimately is to practice at a high level as well. So that means you're talking about more than 120 some odd practices from now until the end of the year. We have to learn how to practice and get better at practice. So when you come in here as a young player, or maybe from another program, you may not know how we practice, but we got to learn to practice really competitive, really intense, but also take care of each other to make sure that, we aren't getting guys hurt, because we can't send anybody off of waivers. This is who we got. So all those things are playing into this spring, and it is a little bit of a different feel.
You guys haven't necessarily rotated a ton at different skill position groups throughout the year, but as you talked about with how evaluations are so important, and like obviously the financial aspect of some of this stuff, you take a guy like Devin, you gave him 300 plus snaps last year. I'm assuming you're expecting that to maybe pay off because of what he was able to do last year. Do you guys maybe want to approach that with younger players more, like what you did with Devin last year, where whether it's Jay Timmons, whether it's Chris Henry Jr., but like get these guys on the field as quickly as possible and find out what they are and whether or not your investment is worth, a long-term thing, essentially, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the first thing we always want to do is win the game, as we know. But then from there, we want to put the best players on the field. And there are guys that deserve to play. And if they earn that right in practice, then we got to put them in the game. Looking at our depth chart and looking at our team, I do think that we have more depth probably in this team here just across the board than, some of the teams we've had in the past. So as you go through each position, you recognize depth. Now, the question is who's going to step up and be those high-end players, those impact players that are going to produce. We do have some that are coming back, but to your point, the more experience you can give a young player, they come in next year looking to take the next step. And that's important. I think it's the same way with Julian. It's the same way with some of those guys. So we'll try to do that the best we can, but we all know what the number one goal here, and that's to win games. But if guys deserve to play, we're going to roll and play with depth. And I think when you look at our roster, you're going to see us probably be in a situation in most positions to play depth this season, maybe more than we have in the past.
Do you feel like having more depth can play into like philosophically how you want to approach things, whether you're talking playing fast, playing slow? You have more guys that you can maybe get into the mix versus last year. It didn't sound like you guys had that same amount of depth at spots.
Well, I think, the whole idea about playing fast is a conversation that, we can have if you want. But, when it goes back, like you don't really see anybody playing fast in the NFL. Some people use it as a tempo changer. And then some teams in college, that's what they do. They play really, really fast. And, they count on that to wear teams down. And that's their philosophy. To me, the number one thing is efficiency. And that's what it comes down to now. Whether we have, to your point, like more depth at other positions, then we probably can afford to play more snaps throughout the season. Then I think you can take a look at that if we feel like it gives us an edge. And so I think it's something to at least consider.
Tavian last year, he seemed like he was probably a little more mature than maybe a lot of first-year quarterbacks would be in the first place, but obviously he's still going through things for the first time. Coming into this spring, how different does he seem to you going through these spring workouts? Another
year under his belt, more confident, has had some really good plays. He's understanding, how to run the offense, how to take care of the football. He's still doing things for the first time. And we're seeing, Julian, set the tone in terms of how it's supposed to look and how you handle yourself. So that's been good for him. But he needs to play. And the more reps he gets, the better he'll be. If you watched him, during that pro day, I mean, he throws a beautiful ball and has the size and all those things. It's playing the game that he needs to continue to do and the preparation for what we're asking our quarterbacks to do. So there has been improvement there. There's another year of maturity. But he has to come in every day with the expectation that, he's playing in the second game against Texas, that he's got to go win, these big games. And that's a big responsibility. Sometimes when you're a backup, you don't feel all that coming on you like you're the starter. But that's the approach he has to have because he's one snap away.
Earl Little lost his black stripe after just 5 practices. What have you seen from him both on the field and then as a leader already acclimating to this locker room?
Earl Little?
Yeah.
Earl, first off, the guys know him. So, Brandon sort of grew up with him. Jeremiah, some of the South Florida guys know Earl. And then obviously the Bama guys know Earl from when he was there. So, I think, he quickly assimilated in terms of just socially with the guys. And then on the field, plays fast, plays twitchy, communicates well, did a great job in the weight room with Mick. So all of those things you could just see naturally as he went into the spring. You felt like this was going to go well. Then you start to see his play on the field. The first time we're tackling and scrimmaging, he's the first guy showing up, making tackles and making plays, and just jumped off the screen right out of the gate. So good for him. He's somebody that saw what we did last year, and I think really liked the scheme part of it. But you'll have to talk to him. But the feedback we're getting from him is he really enjoys the culture, loves the competitiveness. So he's been a bright spot.
Spencer on the right.
Ryan, we've seen a lot of freshman receivers come through here and flash early. What is Brock doing that is so impressive to you right now?
Well, he got his black stripe off today, so I'm sure that'll be a headliner. He made another couple of big plays today. This is somebody who knows how to run a route. He's serious about it. He can play multiple positions, and he's productive. He's his dad was a coach and dad's a receiver coach, and he plays that way. But he's got quick twitch. He can change direction. He's got strong hands. I'm excited to see where his career goes, but he's off to a great start.
Just a quick follow-up. Is this something you see a lot of guys come through here and kind of have an idea of who can possibly flash early? Is he somebody that is even surprising you guys for what he's doing this early?
I mean, I didn't have expectations other than he was going to come in and compete, but I had a feeling just watching him in high school and his approach that he would be able to step on the field early and make an impact. He can handle all three positions, and then you just see the change direction and the route tree and the seriousness and the competitiveness and the toughness. All those things were why we recruited him, and you're starting to see that right from the first week of practice on the field. So we'll see where it goes, but again, another good start.
Ryan, you guys have Kenyatta back at defensive end. I'd imagine he's having a good spring. Aside from him, who is standing out to you at that position group right now?
Well, I think you're seeing, Quay Russo really make an impact out there. He flashed a few times today, made a couple sacks on third down. And then, you obviously have Kenyatta, but that's a position where, we're going to really need some production this year. And so Bo Atkinson, is a guy that had a really good offseason, and, he wants to take the next step this season. Zion Grady had a little bit of a soft tissue, but he's starting to practice again. So we're looking to see him really take the next step as well. And then you have some of the younger guys, you have Epi and some of those younger guys that need to step up into those roles. So, we'll see, but, they're working hard at it, and we'll take a look at the film and see how they did, but they got in the backfield a few times today. So that was a good start, but we know, what that job entails, is getting the quarterback on third down and stopping the run and setting the edge on first and second.
Ryan, after the first day, you mentioned maybe the running backs being your biggest concern. How are those each of those four guys that are healthy enough to go, been doing, and how have they alleviated your concerns at all?
They're looking to get better. I don't think that's going to get solved in just a week of practice. We got work to do there. And so, they got to keep getting better. Legend's been out here for a couple practices again. Hopefully we can get him back here soon, but he certainly flashed when he was in there, but making the transition from being a quarterback to playing running back is two different things, especially at Ohio State. So he's learning that. Favors learning that. Jacoby has very good instincts and vision. Again, he's learning the offense, but he's shown, the ability to really, hit the hole the right way. And he's working on, playing with more power behind his pads. And then Turbo, has had a much better offseason than he had the year before. And so he's getting better, but we still got a long way to go.
Austin, all right.
Ryan, during that brief stint when Bill O'Brien was here, you mentioned how valuable it was, even just in a week or 2 weeks, to have a fresh set of eyes on what you guys do and the feedback. What was the first few conversations like with Arthur Smith, and what's been his impact in a similar fashion?
Well, I think for me, being here now going on 10 years, there's a lot of other ways to do things. And, what I wanted to do was really have an open mind on, when he comes in, what is he seeing? What is he looking at, and taking that feedback? Also knowing that we've had a lot of success here and the things that we've done. So I think that's what we've been trying to do, is mesh those things together. For Arthur, coming from the NFL, there are some things with the hash marks and such that, he's getting accustomed to. But it was great to, listen to his kind of approach and get the first few installs kind of, just from his point of view, with no type of influence on me. And then as time goes on, we'll continue to combine these things with our experience. But it's been good. He's a really good communicator. He is very, very intelligent. He's very excited about our guys. I think when he looks at our offense and he looks at the weapons and he looks at the offensive line and everything, there's really not much that you can't do. So the question is, what do we want to really get good at? And He believes in efficiency. He believes in running the football, play action pass. And obviously, we know we're going to have to win games in the fourth quarter this season, with our schedule and 2-minute drill and everything else. So, but that's the thing with him. He really does understand the pass game and the run game at a very high level. So it's been great. And I think it's been good for our offensive staff to see a different way to approach things, but also not losing our identity.
Ryan, you talked a lot about the philosophy of putting together a recruiting class in the fall and as you get close to signing day. With that in mind, has that changed at all what you want to accomplish in the spring as you guys host dozens of kids each kind of weekend? Does that, maybe change what you want to accomplish as you go to the summer, knowing that, there might be a wave coming in October and November?
Every time we practice, it's a showcase for our guys. It's a showcase for our program. It's an opportunity for recruits to come in and watch our coaches play, watch the competitiveness of our practices, be around our culture, see our city. So it's these are great opportunities every time we have recruits in a building. So, the weekdays are usually good for those who are on spring break, and then the Saturdays are dynamite. So this weekend is a big one for us. We have our Student Appreciation Day, and we're expecting a big crowd. So these are great opportunities. And the idea now more than ever is to make sure that these guys know exactly who we are, what the program is, what the culture is, open up our doors, and then decide if this is what they want. Because I've said it before, Ohio State's not for everybody. And us identifying those right people who are super competitive, understand that we're not allowed to have a bad day here is critical. And watching how we practice is great. But it's also good for them to get around, again, our coaches and see how they operate, see how they treat their players, see how they meet, see how they are on the field. And the more we do that, typically the closer the relationships get and the more we get to learn about them, and that helps. We kind of feel like the more guys get on campus and the more we get to know each other, the more accurate we are in terms of identifying the right people that fit us.
Ryan, you guys have obviously had a lot of high-profile wide receivers come through, and I know everyone has their own path, but Chris Henry's kind of the first of that post Jeremiah doing what he did as a freshman. How do you sort of keep him on the right track when he watched what Jeremiah did? And obviously Jeremiah's not the same as everybody else, but he saw that trajectory happen so quickly.
Well, not only that, but he gets to see Jeremiah every day and his approach. So that's great. And then the other guys in the room, Devin and Kyle bring in a certain level of maturity to that room. Brandon is mature. So I think it's great for him to see that. And he's flashed. He's really had some nice plays. To play as a freshman's a lot. And so, he has to have the mentality that he wants to play from day one, and that he's starting in the first game. That should be his goal. Now, whether he does or not, we'll see. But, he has all the traits. He has all the skills. He has everything that we thought he would be in recruiting. We've seen on the field. So that's exciting. Sometimes that first few practices, you're not sure. To me, it's going to be his mindset, his approach, how quickly he learns things, how fast he adapts to the offense, and can take care of the football and play with the speed and physicality that it takes to play in the Big Ten. And if it comes week one, great. If it doesn't, then Garrett Wilson and Olave and, Jackson and some of those guys, sometimes, around mid-year, is when you start to see that impact. Would love to see him make an impact on special teams, like so many great players who have come before early on to get him on the field. But you think about Emeka, you think about Marvin, all those guys, they kind of started to make their impact about midway through the season. We'll see. There's no, time frame for us. I think about Jeremiah. He was an Iron Buckeye, and that's a big deal around here. One of the first freshmen ever be an Iron Buckeye around here, and found his way on the field to be a starter right out on week one. So it'll be the same challenge for Chris, but he knows what it's supposed to look like because he's got those guys in a room and keeps surrounding himself with Coach Mick and the strength staff and Cortez and Arthur, and he's going to have a good career here. Just got to keep working at it. And but we everything we thought we saw in recruiting, we've seen on the field.
Ryan, we know how much the sport has changed in the last couple of years. The 51 new guys has come up a lot this spring. Would there have been a time a couple of years ago where if we said, hey, 51 new guys for spring, that you would have been nervous about that or worried about the culture, or can we keep going what we want to keep going here if we have that many new guys? Like how did you think then? How do you think now about it?
Yeah, if you had said that a few years ago, yeah, that wouldn't be very good. I'd be nervous. I think the first thing comes to mind is we have this many guys coming at mid-year, which is unique. When typically, some of those guys would be coming in the second portal or in the summer. They're all here now. All kind of came at once. I'd have to go back and look and see if we ever had 51 new guys from January to like June, if that ever came. It's all kind of come at once, which I guess is a good thing. I think when it comes to the high school, the high school recruits who came at mid-year, a lot of those guys know what we are. So there's been a relationship there. They've seen it. They've been to games. They've been to practices, kind of like what we were talking before. The more these guys can be around our program, I think a guy like Chris Henry, I mean, I can't imagine how many games and practices he's been to over these years, camp. And so what happens is, even though they're new guys, they've been around, they know kind of what it's supposed to look like. And then in terms of the players who came in the portal, a lot of these guys, there was some sort of a connection here. When you think about, Cam Calhoun, he went to Winton Woods, so he knows Jermaine. He knows what this is supposed to look like. Quay and James and Earl, they know some of these guys, and Caleb, knows those guys well. So he could set the expectation of what the culture is and making sure that was the right fit. So Kyle Parker, he worked with Cortez. So this isn't just a bunch of guys coming in off the street that we don't know. Obviously, there's been relationships built. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it's not just random. And I think, that's intentional. But there's no question that, these guys haven't played for the Buckeyes before. And I mentioned it out there, there's guys in that group right there that have scars here, that have had success here. And there's a lot of guys that haven't played one snap here yet. So all that comes into play this season. And I guess, we're not unique to that, though. I guess it's the same way across the country, and it's just something that we have to continue to figure out. I mentioned this to somebody the other day, and, I had went on a couple visits with my son, and so I had a little free time, traveling. And so I watched that Netflix documentary on the dinosaurs. And, if you want to feel insignificant, watch that, because it talks about how the dinosaurs were on Earth like 250 million years ago. And, throughout time, it got all the way to like 65 million years ago. Over that time, the world changed, the climate changed, the Earth changed. And some dinosaurs figured out how to continue to adapt, and some died. And I guess that's a little extreme, but I think it's kind of the way it is in college football. The people who know how to adapt are going to continue to move on, and the ones who don't, they die. And so as frustrating as it all is, as much as we all want to just pull our hair out and throw our hands up and realize that this is all extremely crazy. And even being with some of the NFL personnel last Wednesday, when they look at you and say, you are insane to be in college football. They're right, but either you adapt or you die. And so this is another phase of it, is bringing in a whole half of your team is new. They've never played a down of football here, and we're not allowed to lose a game. So we're going to adapt, and we're not going to die.
Yeah, well, that happened over millions of years. This happened over like 3, right?
That's a great point. But nobody cares.
That's not a question. Kind of along those lines, I remember last year you talked about, at this point last year, the 25 team had an edginess. That was the word you kept using. With 51 new guys, is there an identity? Can a team have an identity this early? How important is that for you to get that established? And if I can sneak another one about the offensive line, do you have any idea about how that's going to shake out at this point?
Yep. You've been hanging around Tim May too long. So I would say the first thing is, no, we don't have an identity yet. We don't have a personality yet. No. Now, I will say last Saturday was an opportunity that I challenged the whole staff and challenged everybody in the building about just the energy and the competitiveness of what that was supposed to look like. Passed with an A. I mean, it was as competitive practices I've been around. It was edgy. There were guys flying around making plays. It wasn't perfect. There was a lot of mistakes made, but just the way our guys responded together, the way we competed was excellent. That was a good sign. Where we're going here with our personality, where we're going right here as a team, I don't know yet. Still too early to tell. But it's one of the challenges and one of the things that we put up on the goals of things we want to get done. One is we have to learn how to practice. 2 is we need to create an identity and a philosophy, identity, and then we have to create a personality. Those 2 things. And so the only way to do that is by communicating and talking and guys understanding what we're looking for here. I know what we want. The coaches have made it clear on what the expectations are, but that's important. So we'll keep an eye on that and make sure we're pushing what we want to get done. In terms of the offensive line, we're moving guys around. We're seeing some guys do some good things. Ian Moore has done some really good things so far this spring. You obviously, there's consistent play right there from Carson, Luke, and then Austin, Luke, and Carson. All three of those guys are doing good. Phil's been solid. And so now, all right, who's taking the next step? Ian, Gabe Van Sickle, Jake Cook, Carter Lowe. I mean, these guys all got to take the next step. They're all working at it. We are trying a couple different, combinations. Josh Padilla, is out for the spring, so we'll get him back in the summer. But it's allowed an opportunity for some guys to step in there and do some different things. So we'll see. But the good news is there is depth there, and they're pushing each other. There's good competition right now.
Two more guys, Dan. And then
Jay Timmons got some praise from a couple of players last week. What have you seen from him so far as a freshman?
Competitive. Got his hands on another ball today. You can tell, I'm not exactly in his meetings with coach, but you can tell he's prepared when he steps on the field. He's got a physicality to him, a toughness to him, an edginess to him, which you're looking for with a defensive back, and gritty and productive. Made one play early on that was tremendous, a huge interception. So he keeps playing like that, he's going to find himself on the field.
Yeah. Thanks for the shout out. Defensive line, especially the middle of that defensive line and stuff. I'm hearing Will Smith might be having a pretty good spring. I'm just wondering what your take is there. But James Smith, John Walker, what are you seeing out of those guys? I mean, obviously replacing Cade McDonald's a huge thing.
Right.
And is Edric sort of stepping up? I mean, what are you just kind of seeing from that little mix?
Yeah, they don't have a choice. I mean, we need them to. All four of those guys need to step up in a big way. So they're being challenged every day by Larry, by Matt, and they've done some good things. They really have. They've stepped up. We'll get on the film and see how it went today. But yeah, we need those guys, all four of those guys. Jason Moore as well. I mean, he's been in the program for a while now. It's time for these guys to really step up into their roles and own it. So we're seeing that, and it's good competition with the offensive line, especially with our ones and even our twos. You roll our twos out there, it's a pretty good looking second offensive line for the Big Ten. But either way, these guys got to make big plays for us. They got to stop the run. They got to create havoc up front. So again, we're seeing it, but it's got to be consistent.
Just one quick, is it obvious James Smith and Quay Rusal have been, at Alabama at a program like that? I mean, what sort of jumps out at them with, you mentioned Earl Little a while ago. I mean, what's a little difference that you see from guys like that?
Well, I think the first thing is they have to learn how we practice. And I think it's always an interesting question. I won't get into the answers now, but I think it's always a good question, even for you guys to ask, like what, when you come to Ohio State, what do you notice it's different? And so that's been always good for me to ask those questions. But I think it's just the overall maturity of just playing the game and experience of playing the game. These guys have played in big football games, and they practice a lot and played the game a lot. And that was intentional when we brought these guys in. We wanted to bring some more maturity in guys who have played. So when you think about Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen and Earl Little and Quay and James and John, these guys, they played a lot of football. Allegro, a lot of football. And so although there's a lot of new faces over there, when you actually look at the snap count, my guess is they probably are more experienced than maybe going into last year. I don't know. It's probably close. I haven't done the study on it, but now these guys have to be productive at Ohio State. And that's the challenge. But I'd say overall, just, the experience and maturity. Thanks, guys.